Rebel fans, welcome back to another episode of the Rebel Talk. I'm your host, Zach Moreth. As always, I'm here with your co-host, Daylan Flowers. We're going to dive into a few different aspects today. You know, Lane Kiffin at Media Day, obviously Austin Simmons, TJ Daugherty, and Caden Lee. We're also in attendance, and we're going to give you guys a quick schedule preview. Ole Miss has 9 games in Mississippi. Obviously, that 9th one will be played in Starkville. 9 home games, as Lane Kiffin describes. We'll get into all that details. First and foremost, we want to address the situation regarding Corey Adams and send our utmost respect and prayers to the team, to his family, his friends, and those who loved him. Obviously, a tragedy that happened. We're not going to go too deep into it, but sending our love and prayers towards Corey, his family, friends, and obviously the Ole Miss football program. Getting into, again, the first segment we're kind of going to dive into here. Media Days, Daylan, took place, I believe, a week or two ago. Not much coming out of it, but I will say, you know, the guys looked dapper. Everyone looked pretty tight. And I just wanted to get your opinion on some of the takeaways that you took from, you know, hearing all those different interviews.
Yeah, I took a few things away from Lane, the players that were there. You know, this is a really different standpoint than we were in about a year ago, man. You know, it felt like last year this was all the hype in the world on this Ole Miss team. Dart coming back for year 3, the quote assembled greatest Ole Miss team ever kind of put together in terms of player talent, personnel. And I just felt like there was so much eagerness to see that team ready to play at this point in time last year, and there was so much pressure on that team last year. And this time around, man, there's like in a way, I'm more excited to watch this team play this year, Zach. And when I say that, I mean there's a lot less pressure on this team. There's a lot less pressure on, you know, this offense and this defense and, you know, the capabilities of that team. And that's not, you know, necessarily knocking these players. It's just, I think we have a lot of improving talent. I think the national media and the national standpoint doesn't really know that the player caliber of Austin Simmons, our quarterback. I don't think they understand the running back room to the extent that we have currently right now. I think there are a lot of question marks on this team. So this team has a lot of question marks, but I think there's a lot less pressure. And I noticed that from Lane Kiffin throughout the SEC Media Days. He seemed really calm. And it was something that I mentioned with Stephen Willis on his show that, you know, the family's here now. You know, Knox is here. Landry's been here for a few years now. His ex-wife Layla is here. His brother's right next to him in this neighborhood as well. So he seems calm. He seems happy. You know, he's been playing pickleball, doing that things. This is a Lane Kiffin that I can really get down and comfortable with. And it's something that gives me a little bit of excitement moving into the season. You see he's home and he's at stake. And, you know, who would have thought Lane Kiffin would be at Ole Miss for 6 years, man? Like, it's incredible to say that. And it brings a lot of mechanistic things that I'm really excited for what he's doing and what is going to be the future for this Ole Miss team, especially this year. But one of the big things that I thought I took away from his media day kind of just press talk was the retainment of our staff this year. And it's crazy that we didn't lose a single staff member. And you don't see that really ever in terms of college football, especially when within its top teams, a team that, you know, other than Georgia and Alabama has the most SEC wins over the last 5 years. This team has retained every bit of its staff. And I think that's a really good thing. You don't see that too often. And, you know, I have my obvious critiques about one Charlie Wise Jr. as much does the fan base of Ole Miss, but I think it was really important to get him back. I really think it was important for the development, for the potential, for the capabilities of Austin Simmons. I think it was important to understand that Austin has been here for 2 years already. He's been watching film. He got to play and practice against this one-of-a-kind defense last year. He understands the capabilities it takes to be at Ole Miss, be the quarterback here, understand the system, and know what it takes to win games within this offensive system. So I'm very happy for Charlie being back. And the entire staff being back. This is a staff that is recruited really well, Zach. This is a staff that has really just fit the arms of what the Oxford community has wanted in terms of a great recruiting standpoint, a great football staff, and a great football team. So that builds my confidence in terms of the high-poweredness of recruiting that Ole Miss has seen over the last month and a half, 2 months in terms of the high school rankings, and as well the obvious continued circle of transfer portal rankings over the past few years. And speaking about Austin Simmons as much, man, I say this. I think he's a heck of a guy, an even better player. But I don't want to put all the pressure on the world on him. You know, I think that he has all the capabilities to be really, really good and be a superstar one day. But I think it's easy to look at it that he's already in the Heisman preseason race. And he hasn't even played, you know, he hasn't even, you know, really gotten into his feet wet into the system yet. He's been here for a while, but he's not been on the field yet because I don't want to put all the pressure in the world on this kid. I think he has the capabilities to be really, really good, but it's all going to come out on the field. And I think what's exciting about this, which I won't go into too much into detail now, but we'll talk about a little bit later, is the schedule. I think the schedule benefits us really, really well in terms of comparing it to last year and how good those 4 games were for us in terms of our ranking and how good we looked. But then when we got into SEC play, it kind of showed we needed to play a little bit of better non-conference opponents. So this year with Tulane early and Washington State and playing even Kentucky really early in the season, I'm really excited because I think it's going to give Ole Miss fans the ability to truly see how good this team can be and what dynamics they're going to be able to look forward to in the later parts of the season for what's in store, because there are so many question marks on every aspect of the team. Like, we can say the receiving group is the best part of the team, but we still don't even know, like, how good can Caleb Odom be? How good can Caleb Cunningham be? What is Luke Hasz going to be able to do in this system? So there's so many questions, but the media days gave me a lot of comfort and excitement to see what's going to happen in the fall for this team this year.
Yeah, looking at media day, not a knock to Jackson Dart. The guy's a first-round pick, first-round talent. But to have some of the cameras look the other way and to have a quarterback who, quite honestly, didn't really care about wearing the most expensive suit in the world, it just feels like a step back almost for Ole Miss fans. And you can tell with Austin, man, he just eats, sleeps, and breathes football.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. There's nothing on none of these social media posts. There's no chirping. We're going to the field and we're getting our work in. So to see that, whether it takes 1 year or 2 years, I can tell you that the future on Austin Simmons is promising. And I know the expectations are already pretty unbelievable. And you look, I think it's fair to an extent. I mean, the kid's a college graduate. He's been sitting, learning the Ole Miss playbook for the last 2 years, and he's 19. So expectations, fair in a way. But yeah, like you mentioned, dude, kid's got to play some games at the end of the day, and we're going to have to see for ourselves. But on the flip side, you have DJ Lagway, also in the conference, who's 19, and Arch Manning, who you want to talk about expectations. That kid he's going to have some people all over him from the moment he takes the field. So it's a pretty common trend, I'd say, in today's game of football. But, with Austin, I think he's going to continue to prove it, why he's doing all these successful things and eventually live up to the hype that people are putting him at.
Yeah.
Talking about Caden Lee really quick. Mentioned that he put on 10 to 15 pounds. Dude's a gamer. I think he's similar mindset to Austin. Clean-cut dude. He's very locked in, and I think they have a chance to be, maybe the most productive duo in the country in terms of a quarterback and wide receiver relationship. And we saw it early on, even last year against Georgia. And I think Austin's first touchdown pass was like a bomb to Caden Lee in the end zone.
Yeah.
So we've seen that, and I think it's only going to continue to expand throughout the next season. And then looking into next year and what it holds, Daylan, like you mentioned, I am just excited that we play Kentucky week 2. You look at last year, and it's like the plane was going on a runway, and it was picking up speed. And then as it's about to take off the runway, the engine goes out. And with that loss to Kentucky, essentially the whole season falls apart, and it comes back to take our playoff chances away when push comes to shove. Now you go to Lexington week 2 with hopefully a pretty big chip on your shoulder. You host Arkansas the next week. You're in for some weird stuff. And then a Tulane team who's always pesky, led by John Summerall, who I think is going to be a really good Power 5 coach someday. And then hopefully you survive all that, Washington State game. And then it's LSU time at the end of September. In my opinion, I think you need to be undefeated going into LSU. And if you want to make the playoffs, you probably need to beat them too. You want to look down the stretch of the schedule. You got to go to Georgia, go to Oklahoma, go to Mississippi State. Not that Oklahoma and State are, poised to have really great seasons, but those are hostile environments. You saw it with last year. Alabama went to Oklahoma and got smoked. So weird things happen in the SEC. Ole Miss still has to host Florida and USC late in the season. Excuse me, South Carolina. They should not be called USC. So again, dude, it's an SEC schedule. Technically, it's one of the easier ones, but you're still playing a lot of these big dogs. Fortunately, having Florida, South Carolina, Arkansas at home, I think are really going to come to benefit Ole Miss. But at the end of the day, man, this is a team who could, prove everyone wrong and post an 11-1 or 10-2 record, or go 8-4 or 7-5 worst case scenario. So there's a lot to be learned. That's why we're not diving too deep into individual positional groups and kind of staying on page with the schedule. But I want to get your overall thoughts and kind of that first look at where Ole Miss stands in the SEC, Daylan.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points, man. I think from a lot of the media coverage, this Ole Miss schedule may not be some of the hardest, but I think it's a pretty darn hard schedule in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the totality of everything that goes on. Tulane is a team that has really done well over the last few years. I know they have a new coach and a new coaching staff there, but they got Brandon Pratt out of the transfer portal out of Iowa. I think Tulane's still going to be really competitive this year. Like Kentucky and Arkansas early, Kentucky comes to Oxford last year and beats Ole Miss. Arkansas Ole Miss is always one of those games every single year. Not the last year, but it's a really tricky game, and it's a game that fans want to see, and it's a game that can go either way. And Lane made this point at SEC Media Day. Someone asked him just what he thought made the SEC so hard and so difficult, and it's those middle tier teams. When you go on the road, they have the ability to beat you whether they're having a good season or not. Like you mentioned, Oklahoma thrashed Bama last year and ruined their chance to get in the playoffs. And that can be the same thing with OU this year. Brent Venables obviously is not where he wants to be with this OU team yet, but they still have a lot of five-star guys on that team. They have a great coaching staff, and going to Gaylord is not going to be easy for Ole Miss this year. So a lot of those games are going to be tested. But one of my big things for Ole Miss this year is you're facing a lot of good quarterbacks. Taylor Green, DJ Lagway, like you mentioned. You're facing a lot of guys. Garrett Nussmeier, who is going to have a lot of pressure on him as well to succeed this year. You're facing a lot of good guys that have potential to be really, really good, are really, really good, and have a lot of pressure on them to make their team successful this year. So I think Ole Miss has just about, as hard a schedule as anybody in the conference. And I think it's important to understand the totality of what is going to be capable early in the season. You have to go into Kentucky and you have to win. You have to beat Arkansas at home. You cannot allow the home success over the last few years, other than the Kentucky loss last year, to not define how this season moves forward. Because like you mentioned, you want to go into the LSU game undefeated, man. I think that's really big. For me, LSU had the number one portal class this year. I'm not the biggest believer in Garrett Nussmeier, but I think within the right, talent around him, he can do something, and they can win football games. I think that game is really going to be a big pivot for Ole Miss in 2025, and it's really going to be the showcase of how well they're going to be able to compete. And I think finally Brian Kelly has put together the team in Death Valley to really say this is a team that I think can actually win the national championship. But we're going to see that when it happens and when the season starts. But from paper right now, this LSU team looks really, really good. So I think the schedule bears out really well for Ole Miss. I think, if they're able to go through the schedule really well and make the playoff, I think they're going to be prepared really well based on who they see in the conference this year at home and on the road. I think going to Oklahoma, going to Georgia really prepares you for games like in a playoff type atmosphere. And so when you're able to do those type things, you're going to be prepared for any team and any atmosphere that you face throughout the season. I think one of the big things for me is if you look at the schedule, playing those last couple road games, you go from Washington State at home, but you go at Georgia, at Oklahoma, then South Carolina. You got to mention Lenore Sellers too. Those are that's a 3-game schedule for Ole Miss. How are those 3 games going to be defined? Whether it's adversity or positivity, I don't know. But I think the big thing is for me as well with this Ole Miss team, and I kind of mentioned it earlier with you, man, that this team last year had so much pressure and this team does not. And I don't want Ole Miss fans to see that 3-game skid. And if it happens in the season where they go 0-3 or they go 1-2 in that skid and lose their minds, and that may happen, and that's okay. But I think there's also a bit of confidence in this team. Like you mentioned, Cade Lee, who's been working out with NFL quarterbacks this offseason. I'm really, really excited to see what he's going to be able to do on the football field this year. I think he's one of the best route runners in the conference and in the country, and I think he's only going to be more improved based on his offseason work. He's put on some pounds. Like you said, Cade Lee has superstar potential, and I think a lot of those guys, Caden Lee, Austin Simmons, Daquan Wright, Sunterian Perkins, TJ Daughtery, saw the SEC first team, second team, third team selection, and very few Ole Miss names are on those lists, and I think they're seeing that and they saw that as a sign of disrespect, and I think they're going to take that into the season this year. I think that's something to look out for in terms of understanding what went on in media days, what's gone on over the past few weeks with the absence of two, really important guys and within the program to different to the LSU and to the NFL as well. I think these players have a little bit of hunger going into this season in terms of being a little bit of the underdogs in a way, not necessarily being the underdogs, but kind of being displaced in a lot of these proportions right now. So I think the schedule bears out really, really well for Ole Miss fans. Lane's over the years, especially in those early couple games, has kind of pled with fans to stay the whole game. Well, I think you're going to see that more now. You only get that one kind of game with the Citadel later on in the season. I think Georgia State's still a quality opponent enough for fans to kind of stay. And I think it's a night game, too, if I'm not mistaken, which will definitely help as well. So I'm really excited about the schedule. It kind of peaks on what you want your team to be able to play, especially a team that has the ability to be really good this year. So I love everything about the schedule, man. I think you see a lot of good quarterbacks. It's going to be able to sell tickets, whether you're at home or away. I think it's going to be a fun, fascinating season for Ole Miss. And they're going to be put to the challenge early, which is definitely going to help them for the latter parts of this season. But the biggest thing, and then I'll stop rambling, is being healthy, man. I think this team is healthy. They have the capabilities of winning 10 games. But, we saw last year with so many key injuries to the offensive line, throughout different parts of the running back room, on the defense as well. We got to be healthy. And, we hope for full healthiness within the whole part of the team. But we know football is a physical game, and that does not always happen. But if we can stay healthy majority of the year, I really think this Ole Miss team can compete with any team in the conference.
Final thing I have for you, Daylan, if Ole Miss wants to work their way into the college football playoffs, what record will they need to post this year?
I mean, look, man, it's a great question. It's so hard to really sit there and understand the capabilities of, okay, if Ole Miss had played one better team in those 4 non-conference games last year, those first 4 games, and won, with that 9-3 record still been enough to get them into the playoffs. And then I say that this year with a much better schedule, if this team goes 9-3, would they be able to get into the playoffs? I don't know. I think we kind of talked about this last year when we were going through the whole playoff situation. I just don't know how the committee thinks anymore. And I don't know what they look at. Are they looking at strength of schedule? Are they looking at strength of record? Are they looking at the quarterbacks of each team and which quarterback is better on this team compared to this team that's in 12th or 11th place? I don't know. I want to look at this Ole Miss schedule based on last year and say 9-3 is good enough to get into the playoff. But I don't know. That all depends on things like how do they play? Does Ole Miss go 9-3, but one of those 3 losses is they lost by 28, do they go 9-3 and all those are like last year and only lost by 1 score game? So I don't really know. It's kind of hard to dictate what goes on with the committee within the other teams. I think that's a really good question. I think that, Ole Miss 9-3, I think, based on barring circumstances like I just mentioned, could get you into the playoffs. Yeah. But I thought that last year, and Ole Miss didn't, and South Carolina didn't, and Alabama didn't. So I don't know. I would just say for Ole Miss, take care of your home games. You got LSU, you got Tulane, you got Arkansas, you got South Carolina, you got Florida. Take care of your home games, and compete as hard as you can on the road. It's never going to be an easy SEC road game, but if Ole Miss can continue to make the Vaught a prolific home environment, then I see no way that the confidence built on those home games can't, swivel out 3 or 4 more road wins for this team, which should get them into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and like you said, dude, I mean, you can mix and match all this. Like if Ole Miss hadn't lost to Kentucky but lost to Georgia, obviously it's just a different level of, competitor. So we're going to continue to dive into this as we get closer to the season. In my opinion, I think Ole Miss needs to notch another 10-win season, excluding the bowl game. So that's 2 losses in the regular season. I see that happening. Probably Georgia, I think you could mark down as 1. And then either a combination of LSU, Florida, or South Carolina as the other. Again, camp's starting up here soon in August. We're going to get a lot more answers and more details on specific positional groups. But that's really all I had for today, Daylan. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, man. Hotty toddy. Like Zach said in the beginning, prayers to Corey Adams' family and loved ones, man. Such a tragic loss to the Ole Miss family. Was really excited to see him put on a Rebel jersey this year, but really sad news, and just wish the best for his family and his loved ones. Man, we want them to know that the Rebel Walk and all Ole Miss family are with them right now in these tough times.
Absolutely, prayers to the Adams family. As always, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, tune into therebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports needs. Catch Daylan and I on social media. Hotty toddy and go Rebs. Thanks, guys.